Good morning. Happy Friday and welcome to Mentoring Makes a Difference 2. I want to start by thanking you, our guests today, for signing up for this seminar. Certainly in this era, there are plenty to choose from. And the fact that you have chosen mentoring tells us that it's in your heart or you wouldn't be here. So on behalf of our group and our committee, thank you so much for choosing us. The vehicle that has brought us here today is the Florida Bar Professionalism Committee and the Henry Latimer Center for Professionalism. It's a committee that meets annually and quarterly under the guidance of the Florida Bar. I'd like to thank a few folks, and I'd also like to introduce myself. My name is Jason Berger, and I am coming to you live from Stuart, Florida, the Treasure Coast. And I am the mentorship chair, and I'm honored to chair this seminar for a second time. I want to thank the Florida Bar. I want to thank the Florida Bar committee members. I most certainly want to thank our speakers for today, Secretary Simone Marstiller, Judge Jason Jones, and attorneys Daniela Mendez and Erin Weinstock. I also want to thank our committee, each of which has worked hard to put on this seminar today, and each of which will have a role and a place today. So thank you for your collegiality and your teamwork. And I also want to thank our chair, Elizabeth Hunter. With that being said, I want to set the tone for today. And I like to do this. I want to bring you back to grade school. And I want you to think about your grade school, your high school, your law school. And certainly there was a coach or a guidance counselor or a law professor. And I know we have representation from all over the state today because I looked at the roster. So from this end, go Gators. Or a dean or a judge. And the point is, for each and every one of us, I believe that our mentors have been there for us each and every step of the way. And I know for me, whether it was a legal issue, an ethical issue, a personal issue, my mentors have always been there for me to guide me. And I'm certain and I believe that your mentors have always been there for you. And certainly we are a mentor-driven profession. I believe if you look at anyone that is successful in this profession, they are surrounded by successful people. So having said that, I believe our profession has given us a great deal of pride and pleasure and wisdom. And for all that our profession has done for us, the hope is that we give back to our professions. One of the ways in which to do that, and a great way to do that, is mentoring. So with that being said, I have a few more introductions. I want to start off by introducing our president-elect of the Florida Bar, Gary Lesser, who will be introducing his theme for next year for us. So Gary?
He's not on yet.
Okay, so then let me talk about our award-winning executive director, Miss Rebecca Bandy, who you see front and center. Rebecca Bandy is a native of Nassau County. She is a 2005 FSU law graduate. She was appointed to be our director in 2018. In 2021, she won the Bar Professionalism Award, and certainly she earned that. You will not find a more kind, professional, and genuine person as Rebecca. And certainly she's going to be speaking to you in a minute. I do see Gary Lesser. So with that being said, our president-elect, who's going to talk to us about his theme for the upcoming bar year. Thank you for joining us, Gary.
You're welcome. Good morning. You know, the idea of mentoring, making a difference is right on the money. And I had the great occasion to have breakfast with Jason, and breakfast is my favorite meal. Secret intel. I'll eat it any time of the day, actually. And we were talking about mentoring, and as it so happens, I'm going to be sworn in as president of the Florida Bar in a couple of months. I'm getting used to saying that. And one of the priorities in my year as president will be a mentoring program aimed at lawyers with 3 years or less experience at firms of 3 and fewer lawyers. A specific target of that group is obviously going to be people who graduate law school and were not able to get a job with a law firm or a governmental entity. So they throw up their own shingle, or they go to work with a buddy of theirs who maybe graduated a year before, and they're not getting mentoring. That is very much needed by new lawyers, especially. We don't say young lawyers because then it's young and older lawyers. We have newer lawyers and more experienced lawyers. And this will cover areas of ethics and professionalism. This will cover areas of how do you deal with situations, difficult opposing counsel. This will deal with areas about talking to someone who will give advice about the path of your career and what that might look like. It'll be a robust program. It's being worked on right now, and subject to approval at the Board of Governors meeting next month. We'll try to be launching that by the end of the year, and we think we'll be having a very good impact. And we're appointing a special committee of people who can help with the mentor perspective, like Jason, and people who can help with the mentee perspective, people who've been a newer lawyer for a few years and have managed to find their way. The affected group by data is about 4,800 lawyers. I don't think we're going to get all 4,800 lawyers to participate. Georgia has a mandatory program. We're not doing that. We're not going to make it mandatory. It's not a great way to get cooperation, but we think it will be impactful. Mentoring does make a difference, and I wanted to share that with the group today and look forward for the rest of the program this morning.
Well, thank you, Gary. Much appreciated. And we all certainly look forward to your year and your theme of mentorship. So thank you. With that being said, thank you. With that being said, our director, Rebecca Bandy, thank you.
Good morning, and thank you for joining us today on a Friday morning. The turnout for this has been amazing, which is so encouraging because mentoring does matter. It's so super important, especially in this time when a lot of us are working hybrid situations, or we're back in the office after some time working remote. And we've been isolated for the good part of the last 2.5 years. And so I encourage everyone today to really take some notes, to really listen to what the panelists have to say. We have some amazing people, including the Honorable Jason Jones, who was one of my first mentors when I was interning at the state attorney's office in Jefferson County, Florida, which is Monticello, and he was my supervising attorney. So he was the first person I thought of when we put the panel together. So definitely, if you have questions today, don't hesitate to put them in the chat or the Q&A function. We will be monitoring it throughout the morning, and we're happy to answer as many questions as we can. But we are grateful for you and grateful for the fact that you recognize that mentoring is such a tremendous part of professionalism. So thank you, and thank you to our panelists, and thank you as always to our committee members, the working group that put this together, and our standing committee on professionalism as a whole. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you, and we'll turn it over to John Schiaffino. Thank you, John.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, everybody. I'm John Schiaffino. I'm a lawyer over in Tampa, and I sit on the professionalism committee and with Rebecca and Jason and the other folks here today. And it's my privilege to introduce our first panelist and speaker, Secretary Simone Marstiller. Now, the challenge with introducing someone like Secretary Marstiller is not what to say, but what to leave out. She has been to the mountaintop and back, and her story is an amazing one. But I'll be brief because I know nobody wants to hear me talk. Secretary Marstiller was born in Monrovia, Liberia, and grew up in St. Petersburg here. She's a double Stetson grad. Today sits on the Stetson Board of Trustees. She practiced for several years in state government. She served as general counsel of the Department of Management Services, served as general counsel of the Office of Attorney General, served as secretary of the Department of Business and Professional Regulation, and served as executive director of the Florida Elections Commission. And then in 2010, she was appointed to the First District Court of Appeals. And after serving several years on the first DCA, she went on to serve as secretary of the Department of Juvenile Justice and now serves as Secretary of the Agency for Healthcare Administration. Yes, Secretary Marstiller has literally done it all, and she could run this state in her sleep. Now, important to me personally, Secretary Marstiller was a colleague at my law firm for several years at Gunster Yoakley. She's an outstanding lawyer, was and is a kind and patient mentor to me and many others, and is a very dear friend. And one last point, if you're not following her on her Twitter account, you're missing out. Her posts are brilliant, at S. Marstiller. Trust me, you'll thank me. Ladies and gentlemen, Secretary Simone Marstiller.
Well, thank you for that wonderful introduction, John. Thank you so much. And thank you to the committee for inviting me to be part of this panel this morning. Thank you as well to the folks who have signed on to listen to the panel. I will tell you that I watched part 1 of this series, and for the 2 hours I sat at full attention, came away from that with so much really, really good information. And so to the folks who are listening to today's installment, if you haven't had a chance to watch the first installment of this, please absolutely do. It will be so worth your time. Before I jump into my conversation, which is what I'm hoping to have with everyone today, I do want to make a shout out to one of the seminar attendees this morning, my daughter, Crystal Kachi, who has recently passed the bar exam. Yay, exactly. She's stiff-armed law practice for a long time, but you know, everything in its time. And I am so proud to be able to soon call her a colleague in the Florida bar. You know, as we heard earlier from the president-elect and from Jason, that the work that we do as lawyers, the profession that we're in, it really is about getting guidance and mentorship from the moment you start your profession all the way through. I can tell you that even now, in my position, I need mentors. I've always had them. I can't say that I planned them necessarily, but I've had them. And they have been invaluable to me as I have moved through my life and my career. And we talk about mentorship. We know that it's important. I'm hoping that I can help the folks who are watching the seminar today come away with a feeling that it's important, but it's not impossible. I don't want anybody to feel stressed about finding mentors. I want you to embrace it as I have and many others have. So first of all, I mean, what really is a mentor? Mentor is somebody who is a wise and trusted counselor, a person who gives somebody who is younger or less experienced help and advice over a period of time. It's an advisor, a guide, a teacher, a tutor, a coach, instructor, cheerleader, trainer. All of those things, to me, fit within the rubric of being a mentor. You know, you see the sort of explosion in the field of life coaching. All that is mentoring. That's all it is. And it really starts, in my mind, with the relationship. It's all about the relationship. Whether it is a relationship that comes along organically or comes about organically, or it is part of a program like you heard the president-elect talking about establishing. It's about relationships. It's about being able to establish some safe ground to talk about your concerns, your goals, your dreams, your issues, be they professional or otherwise. My best experiences, both as a mentee and as a mentor, have been in relationships with folks with whom I was able to establish some common ground and trust. trust on both sides, mentor and mentee. The mentor wants to be able to trust the mentee so that she, the mentor, feels free to share stories, to share personal stories, to share her struggles and her challenges. And at the same time, the mentee wants to trust the mentor so that the mentee is able to open up and share. You know, we're lawyers. We are trained to listen. You have to listen. You've got to be open. Many times somebody is coming to you with an issue that they frame a certain way. But I think it's important to ask questions and to really listen, because many times the issue is deeper or it's something else. And the help that the individual needs is really not what they articulated. So it's about trust. It's about listening. One of the major keys in my experience to a successful mentor-mentee relationship is the choice of the mentor. And this is really me speaking to mentees or potential mentees out there. You know, the person that you're going to choose as your mentor will be probably somebody highly successful. It should be somebody whom you've seen, you know, speaking or whatever the case may be. Somebody you like, somebody you respect, somebody who has personal attributes that you admire, someone who, you know, you believe and you've seen who's established a really great work-life balance. Doesn't have to be somebody like me, because I may not have the experience that you need to help you. But in making that choice, I think at the end of the day, your mentor should be someone that you would want to be, someone you would want to emulate. I think if you start there with the person that you choose as your mentor, you know, you've already won 95% of the battle. Remember, it's a relationship. Again, my best experiences have been both as a mentor and a mentee with individuals with whom that relationship didn't necessarily start as a mentor-mentee situation, but it grew into that. One of my greatest mentors was a former employer, a former boss, when I first started practicing. And he became a mentor. He's become a friend. He is someone who reaches out and checks in with me from time to time, which is great. I'll tell you a great story about being mentored by him, even at a time when I didn't realize I needed it. This person is Judge Emerson Thompson, who I clerked for when I first graduated from law school. And when I left his employ, I became a lawyer for the Agency for Healthcare Administration, as it turns out, as an appellate lawyer. And so I happened to have an oral argument in the 5th District Court of Appeal where he was a judge. Obviously, he could not sit on that panel. But I didn't know that during my oral argument, Judge Thompson was standing behind the curtains, behind the bench. And when I finished my argument and, you know, went out into the vestibule, he had a list of a legal pad's worth list of things that I needed to improve. We laughed about it. I appreciated it though, because he was invested in my success. He wanted to make sure that I became the best oral advocate that I could be. And he wanted to give me that advice. And he's done that for me so many times since then. I can't even count the times or the ways. And as I've gone along, those kinds of relationships have been the ones that have benefited me the most. As a mentor, even though some of my mentor-mentee relationships came about because, say, a law student came to me and said, "Hey, Judge Marstiller, I'd love it if you would, serve as a mentor for me." I am always open to that. Love it. It's the most fulfilling thing that I can do as a lawyer. to help advance the profession and help an individual develop professionally. And even though those relationships kind of started as a cold call, almost, if you will, I always made sure to get to know my mentees. Where are they from? What are their lives like? What are their challenges? It's, again, getting to know each other. It all comes back to the relationship. Those things go both ways. I try to be as open as I possibly can be, because there may be things, stories that I tell or experiences that I have that may not necessarily have anything to do with the practice of law, but yet might be able to help my mentee. We hear a lot about being, mindfulness and the stress of the job. And as I mentioned before, work-life balance. Those are all very important things. It's not necessarily, your mentor-mentee relationship doesn't have to be limited to just the work. It can filter out into other things, and that's perfectly appropriate. So the mentor and the mentee mutually create a safe space to explore ideas, feelings, and doubts. As a mentee, if you have established that relationship with your mentor, you've got to also be open to, constructive criticism, because that's all part of growth. I recall within the last few years, one of my mentees, who is a former law clerk of mine, wanted to pursue a judgeship, which I think she is perfectly capable of, very bright, excellent writer, all of that. And so she sought my advice on how to go about it as she was preparing for her interview. And one of the things that I had to say to her was, you need to have someone, not necessarily me, but you need to have someone coach you in the way you come across. Again, very bright young woman, well-established, great credentials, but she's young, and she sounds young, and she talks young. And I know it was hard for her to hear that bit of criticism from me, but she later came back and said, Judge, I really appreciated you telling me that, because I didn't realize that that's the way I'm coming across. So you've got to be brave enough to take that constructive criticism in the way it is presented. One of the things that I think is really important in a mentor-mentee relationship is, like any relationship, you got to be specific about what you want. What do you want to take away from the relationship? How do you want it to be? What are your goals? What do you want your mentor to do for you? Do you need a coach? Do you need a champion? Do you need a connector? Some or all of those things. So a mentor is, the person who's going to give you advice and help you to think through the issues and whatnot. A champion, mentor can be a champion, or you can have a separate champion. Champion is the person who is going to sort of stick their neck out for you and advocate for you in front of others. So I'll give you an example of a champion in my life. When I was a young lawyer working for the Agency for Healthcare Administration, my boss, the then general counsel of the agency, her name is Julie Gallagher. And I, after a couple of years of working for her as an appellate attorney, loved the work, but I decided that I wanted to apply for a position in the governor's general counsel's office. And I told Julie that I really was interested in doing this work, and I had no idea how to go about it. And so Julie did what a champion would do. She picked up the phone for me and called the governor's general counsel's office and said, hey, I have a woman here, a lawyer who's working for me. I want her to come down there and intern with you all for 2 weeks. At the same time I was interning, of course, I still had to do all my regular work, but my application for a position in the general counsel's office was pending. I mean, can you imagine how fantastic that was for me to go be an intern in that office? I could not, that wouldn't have happened had it not been for Julie's willingness to champion me and to call downtown and to say, hey, I've got a lawyer. She's good. She's eager. She would be great for the governor's team. Give her a chance. That's what a champion does. A connector also can be your mentor, but your connector is going to be someone who's going to help you to get in touch with other individuals who can help you along your path to professional success. I will say this, let me give you a caveat for mentees and potential mentees. As I said before, it's about establishing a relationship and it's about building trust. If you're looking for a connector, I would suggest that you not go to someone simply because they can connect you with other people. Your mentor wants to help you, to be sure, but doesn't want to be used, I guess is the best way for me to put it. And I know that that sounds a little harsh, but that's the reality. So build a relationship and those connections will come. Be realistic about your goals and match those goals to your mentor's experience. You know, I remember one of my mentees who was at the time a law student at FSU Law School here in Tallahassee. I remember having a conversation with him one day. We would meet for coffee once a month, which was great. And so we were talking about what his goals were. And he's like, oh, I'd really love to be, you know, president of the United States. And I thought, I can't help you with that. You know, I mean, that's just the reality of it. Now, there are things that I could help him with along the way from a political perspective and an experience perspective. And these are the things to think about, sure. But not having run for, you know, political office at the local, state, or national level, I couldn't really, you know, help him. But you want to be, so as a mentee, you want to be realistic about the goals and what you want from your mentor. Tell your mentor exactly what it is that you're hoping to get out of the relationship. When I was watching the first installment of this mentorship series, one of the individuals on that panel talked about that sometimes, you know, some mentorship relationships last for a long time. Some mentor-mentee relationships are very situation or issue specific. I think either of those are great. But you definitely want to be specific about the goal and what it is you want to accomplish and what help it is that you're seeking. Come to your meetings with your mentors with, I wouldn't say an agenda, but knowing what you want to talk about. Everybody's busy, and you all are going to hear this, you know, time and time again. Everybody's busy, and it's not necessarily that we're all busy, but I don't know about you, but when I go to a meeting, I want to know what I'm going in to talk about, and I want to know what I'm coming out of that meeting, either knowing, learning, having an action item, whatever the case may be. It's important to know what you're going to ask it, get the information that you need. I think that that is the most satisfying sort of back and forth between the mentor and the mentee. When you're both, you know, both people in that relationship are clear on what the target is, that's when you're going to get your best results, and both of you will come out of the relationship with a really strong sense of accomplishment. I like to know that, not that I'm saying that my mentees have to take my advice, but I think in order to encourage me to provide additional advice and to think of other ways I can be helpful, it's really, I need feedback as well as a mentor. So it's important to me that my mentees come back to me and say, you know, Judge, I did XYZ, you mentioned this, I did a couple of those things, here's how it turned out, for better or for worse. That kind of feedback helps me to be a better mentor And again, if you have established that level of trust with your mentor, you can have that back and forth. It's all about the relationship. It's all about the trust. The other thing I would say to mentees is, and mentors, quite candidly, is you've got to be committed to the relationship, to the goals, to the outcomes, all of that. You've got to be committed. Both parties have to be willing to put in the work because it is work. Both parties have to be willing to kind of be in it for the long haul. Even if it turns out that it's not a long-term relationship, it's good to kind of come into it with a sense that, okay, we're in it to win it. I'm here for you, you're here for me. I'm invested in my mentee's success. My mentee is invested in me and what I can give to him or her as a mentor. That's the best way to have a successful mentor-mentee relationship. Follow through. I think I sort of touched on it just now. Follow through. I have found that when I sit down with a mentee, he or she is asking me particular questions and we're talking about things, and I give, some guidance. Follow through is key, both for me. Give me some action items. Follow through is key for both people. We both want to know that we are both invested in this relationship. Don't forget to set up a time for the next meeting. One of the things that has worked for me, and it may, be different for everybody, but I like to have a set time and a set place to have my mentor-mentee meetings. It doesn't have to be in my office, quite candidly. Normally it's not. I like to pick a place that is neutral, coffee shop, lunch, park, whatever it might be, where we can sit, we can relax, we don't, the phone's not ringing and people aren't running in the office and things like that. Find a time, a set time and a set schedule. What's worked for me and my mentees has been kind of a once a month scheduled meeting. But of course, in between there, phone calls, text messages, emails, great. One of the things that I would recommend for mentees, now you're going to, if you've established a relationship and the relationship is going well, and you're wanting this person to provide a recommendation or anything like that for you, so to be a sponsor or a champion, great. If your mentor is willing to do that for you, great. But don't ask your mentor to stick her neck out for you if you're not going to follow through. I will tell you, there have been times when I've been asked by mentees over the years, they were either former employees or, just mentees who came along and I was working with, who have asked me to do that very thing. Could you put in a good word? Could you serve as a reference? I am more than happy to do it because I'm invested in their success. But it's disappointing to me as a mentor when sort of nothing happens. I don't hear about it. The person asks me to do that for them, and it turns out that the individual wasn't really kind of interested in that opportunity. I feel like I haven't been able to use my influence and my experience in a way that's helpful to them. And I think in those circumstances, I feel quite candidly a little taken advantage of. And again, I know that sounds harsh, but we're here to talk about successful mentor-mentee relationships. And there are do's and don'ts. For me, one of those don'ts is if you're going to ask your mentor to stick her neck out for you, follow through, do it in situations in which you're really invested in this opportunity and you're going to go for it with gusto. I love mentoring people. I love sharing my experience, and I do like to champion my mentees when the opportunity presents itself. I have no problem doing that. I think it is a wonderful way to not only give back, considering my mentors along the way, but it's also a way to train up and develop, the professionals who are coming along. And I think, as I said at the outset, you see all this gray hair, right? I still need mentors. I needed mentors when I was deciding to apply for the appellate court. I didn't make it through the first time. The first time I did, I reached out to one or two individuals, thought I knew it all, didn't make it through. The second time, I was much more strategic about the mentors that I chose. And I got a broad swath of advice, really, really good advice. And I took all of their advice. I followed through with it. I went back to my mentors and told them what I had done, made sure that they knew that I valued their input for me. And as the good Lord would have it, was successful my second time through. But I couldn't have done it, ladies and gentlemen, without those mentors. They were helpful, they were open, they were supportive, they were not judgmental. That's one of the things that hopefully your mentor-mentee relationship will turn into. As I said earlier, my daughter's on the watching the program, and I give her advice from a mother's perspective, right? I love her unconditionally, but I can be judgmental, and that's the nature of that relationship. The mentee-mentor relationship shouldn't be kind of a mama bear, baby bear situation. It really is your mentor is taking you under her wing, giving you the benefit of her experience, challenging you to be sure, giving you constructive criticism to be sure. But there is that mutual trust, that mutual respect. And I think that if you're able to establish that, your mentor-mentee relationship will be extremely successful. It all comes back to, I know I keep saying relationship, you're going to get tired of hearing the word relationship, but that's exactly what it is, ladies and gentlemen. It's a relationship, whether it's through a structured program or it happens organically. It's a relationship. And so I know that you all have other individuals that you're going to hear from today. I hope that you all are taking notes, because this is really, really important to your professional development and success. Take notes, ask questions. I'm going to throw this out there now. I'm going to be on the program all the way to the end, so I'll be around to answer any questions anyone has of me relative to my experience as a mentor and a mentee. But I'll throw this out to the audience. I am open to being a mentor to anyone who's willing to ask. But what I ask of you is to be committed to that relationship as I will be to you and to that relationship. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I will turn it back to either John or Jason.
Well, thank
As
you.
I said, I'll be around to the end.
Thank you for not only what you've done today, but what you do for our state every day. With that being said, I'm going to give it back to our director, who is going to introduce her mentor.
Thank you. Before I do that, I do have a quick question for Secretary Marstiller, and that is what are some tips you would give for setting appropriate boundaries for your mentees?
So, well, let me sort of answer that question with a question. When you say appropriate boundaries, what are you thinking of?
Setting up the rules for the relationship. Everything you said was so important about making sure you respect the relationship, making sure you set the appropriate goals, that you match your mentor-mentee relationship with the goals that are there. How do you ensure that no one feels taken advantage of by the relationship, or that no one is fulfilled by it in the end? What are some tips you would give?
Well, what I have done, I'm very specific and direct about my expectations, and it is about expectation setting, right? So the mentee is going to hopefully say to me, these are the things I want to accomplish. I'm going to say, okay, if I'm going to do this for and with you, here are the things I'm going to need from you. I think it's important, like in any relationship, you don't want to hide the ball. You want to be specific about your expectations, your needs, your, I call them pet peeves, your likes, you know what I mean? And I think that's okay. And if, at the outset, either individual, feels like, this is not going to work, that's okay too. Nobody's feelings should be hurt if either party that feels this might not be the right fit for me. That's okay. I think that's what that first meeting really should be about, is feeling each other out, talking about those things. We're all grown men and women. We are professionals, and we should be able to set those ground rules. I think that that's important. So one of the things that I've done, and I try to make myself available whenever. But one of the things that I've asked my mentees to do is, let's meet at a particular time. I tend to not answer the phone after 9 at night, those kinds of things, and I think that's fine. But it's about setting, yes, boundaries. I don't really think of it in terms of boundaries. I just think these are the rules, these are the ground rules. If you want a relationship with me, here's what I need from you, and I think that's perfectly fair to do.
Thank you so much. So I am going to introduce the Honorable Jason Jones this morning. I will keep it short because I think he speaks for himself in terms of his qualifications and his demeanor. I met Jason in law school, Judge Jones in law school at FSU Law. He was in the class of 2003. I graduated in 2005. And he was my supervising attorney at the state attorney's office in Monticello, which is Jefferson County here on the outskirts of the Second Judicial Circuit. We've been friends since. I've watched his daughter Amelia grow up, and his wife Daniela is just phenomenal. In addition to his time as a prosecutor, he spent a considerable part of his career at the at FDLE and was general counsel there before being appointed in 2020 to the county court bench here in Leon County. That being said, he is an amazing person. His demeanor is always distinguished and calm and classy, and he readily gives his time to the Center for Professionalism on a regular basis. One of the things we do here at the center is we teach a diversion class for attorneys who've had issues with the bar and with the discipline process. And we include a judge in our presentation to those people as part of our curriculum. And so Judge Jones always clears his schedule and comes on board and speaks to our Florida Bar members who are part of the course. And he's always very direct and calm with them. And I think they leave with a sense of a renewed sense of what we do as a profession. It's not just a job, and that's a core message here at the bar. So without further ado, I introduce you to one of my mentors, Judge Jason Jones.
Thank you, Rebecca. And when Rebecca introduces me as one of her mentors, I always I think back and think back to the fact that I was a baby attorney myself when I was mentoring Rebecca. And sometimes I feel like it was the blind leading the blind, but I was very fortunate. And kind of the theme of what I want to talk about today is I was fortunate that I had a mentee in Rebecca and a lot of the mentees that I've had over the years that were eager mentees. But what happens when you have the mentee that what I call the reluctant mentee, or vice versa, the reluctant mentor? As you know, in our profession, mentees can come into our lives in many different ways. They could be interns, as Rebecca was at the state attorney's office. And neither of us had a choice with that. So we were thrown together in a situation where I was told I was going to supervise an intern, and Rebecca was provided with me as her supervisor. And so we were kind of thrown together, and neither of us chose one another. Thankfully, it turned out great, as most of those relationships do, but that's not always the case. You also have clubs and organizations in our profession. And I think in those situations, a lot of times you have people that have volunteered on both sides. You have mentors that say, I would like to mentee or mentor somebody, and mentees that say, I want to be mentored. So I think in those situations, you have willing participants on both sides, and it's probably going to work out in a good situation. You also just have work assignments where you're thrown together and you have kind of an informal mentor-mentee relationship. And then I would also say in our profession, kind of a different thing that you would not see in any other profession is I think mentors can also be opposing counsel. I've had several times throughout my career where opposing counsel have helped me or come to me after a hearing or a trial and given me feedback. And I think that that's something that is wonderful in our profession and something that is unique to our profession. So as I said before, eager mentees are easy and eager mentors are easy. They're willing to take your advice, they are seeking your advice, and they want to learn from you. But what happens when you have a reluctant mentee? They could come in many different forms. You could have a know-it-all, somebody who thinks that they know, they're smarter than you, that they know everything, and they just don't want your advice. You might have people that come off that way, but it might be because they're shy or they're an introvert. I myself am an introvert. So that is something that in this profession I had to get over and had to kind of get out of my comfort area so that I could go and ask for help and ask for advice, because that's just something that at first would not come naturally to me. And then you might have people that are just embarrassed. They're embarrassed to ask for help because they don't want to seem like they don't know what's going on. So, what are some strategies to combat some of these things? I think for all of them, even the know-it-all, the best way to approach, let's say you're assigned a mentee, and I'm going to use a personal example, and I feel like this is an example where I failed as a mentor. The state attorney's office, in addition to supervising interns, as I did with Rebecca, we had a formal program. It was short-lived, and it was towards the end of my career at the state attorney's office, where they would assign younger misdemeanor attorneys to felony attorneys. And they would say, you're their mentor and he's your mentee. And I had a reluctant mentee. I offered several times to sit with him in trial or have him sit second chair in my trials, and he just was not interested. He, I think, fit into the know-it-all category. And I was a busy felony attorney with a large, serious caseload, and I basically failed because I did not go and pursue that person and try and make him participate in the program. And I think one of the simplest things I could have done was just, instead of trying to approach it as a professional mentor-mentee relationship in the beginning, because I did not know him very well, I should have just invited him to lunch, invite him to coffee, try and build, as Secretary Marstiller said, try and build that relationship. So start from the very basic, I want to get to know this person. And then you will find out if they are shy or introverted or embarrassed. You might find that if you get to know them, that they will be more open to accepting criticism or information from you. And it might be a long-term project that you just, for the first month, you don't talk about anything work-related. You're just there building that relationship. And once you've done that, and something else I could have done and you could do in this situation is, instead of asking if I could sit with him during trial, I should have just went into his trials and started taking notes, doing all the things that you would do for a mentee. And that way that when they are open to it, or maybe they see you in the courtroom or they see you in that hearing, or preparing for their oral argument, you can offer that criticism and encouragement based on what you saw. When they get to that point where they are willing to then accept your information and your knowledge, I always try and start with the positives of everything that I thought that they did great. And then when it gets to the criticism part, I always include a personal story of a time when I failed in either the exact same way or a similar way. And trust me, I have tons of stories of when I failed in similar or the same ways as my mentees did. And so I have a wealth of war stories that I can share. And I do that because I think it helps disarm them and make them realize that they're not stupid, that they are not a bad attorney, that we all go through this. And it is important to share those failures with them. I learned very early on, as I'm sure all of you did, that I learned far more from the times that I failed. I learned far more when I got the not guilty verdicts than when I got the guilty, because I got the guilty verdict, I did everything right, and I moved on to the next case. But when I failed, I sat and criticized and looked at everything I did and what I could have done better. And early on in my career, it was when I was an intern. I grew up in Key West, Florida. I actually did my internship at the office in Monroe County. And I had the unique experience that my county judge in the court that I was in was also my high school football coach. He was my position coach in high school. And so we already had that mentor-mentee relationship. And so it was very easy for us to fall into, after a loss, him bringing me in and coaching me up and giving me all the things that I did wrong. And he, I would really say, was my first true mentor in the legal profession once I started practicing. I had a lot of law professors that were mentors, but for the practice portion, he was, my example. And he's one that I've always strived to be like when I mentor young attorneys. So I've talked a little bit about the reluctant mentee. I just want to flip for a minute and talk about the reluctant mentor. So for the younger or the newer attorneys on, as we said, the call, if you find yourself paired with somebody who maybe you didn't choose and they didn't choose you, and you get the feeling that they don't want a mentee, in some ways, there's not a whole lot you can do about that, but you can still learn from them. And it might be that you learn things that you should not do. You can still go and watch them in court or watch them in meetings. And unfortunately, if they're not willing to mentor you, they probably are somebody that you don't want to emulate. And they probably are somebody that is not a shining example of our profession. So learn from that, watch them, watch what they're doing, because chances are there are things that are going to be pitfalls and things that you don't want to do in your career. I've had people in my life that are that way, and I learned as much from them as I did from the good mentors, because I learned things that I did not want to do and the type of attorney that I did not want to be. And if you find yourself in that unfortunate situation, I encourage you to seek out a willing mentor and to seek out a better mentor that may not be part of the formal program that you're a part of, so that you still have that person in your life. Mentees, do not be scared to ask questions and to ask what you in your mind might think is the stupid question, because as I said before, we've all asked those questions. We've all had those failures, and most mentors are going to be more than willing to share with you those stories of times when they failed at things that they had struggles with, and basically help you learn from their mistakes. You can learn from your own mistakes, but everyone else is willing to let you learn from their mistakes as well. if you find yourself in a situation when you do have a reluctant mentor, you also might want to keep in mind that they might fit into one of the categories that I talked about of the reluctant mentee. It might just be because they are shy. It might just be because they are an introvert, or it might be because they think that they are going to be a bad mentor because, like myself and Rebecca, I was a brand new attorney. And so there was a little reluctance on my part of what am I going to teach her other than all of the things that I've done wrong in the past year before she came into the office. So I think that you could use those same strategies of just trying to break the ice by seeing if they're willing to meet with you at lunch or to meet with you for coffee, and then see if you can develop that relationship, because they may ultimately just start warming up to the fact of being a mentor. So don't just take it as, well, they just don't want to help me, or they're a bad person. They also might just be one of the people that doesn't feel comfortable or doesn't feel like they have a lot to offer when it comes to mentorship. So I kind of want to wrap up with that. I'm happy to answer questions at the end, but when I was trying to think of things to present on mentorship, especially when I looked at the wonderful group that I was presenting with, I was trying to think of something that was a little bit different of an angle when you talk about mentors and mentees. And so I thought that this might be a helpful topic for everyone. So thank you.
Thank you, Judge Jones, and thank you for your service. We now have our friend and team member, Shardeen Hill. Shardeen?
Thank you, Jason. Good morning, everyone. It is my pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Daniela Mendez. Daniela is currently the campus director at Western Michigan University Cooley Law School, Tampa campus, as well as an adjunct professor at Cooley Law School. Before serving in this role, Daniela worked as a public defender for the 13th Judicial Circuit and worked as a legal intern with the Cooley Innocence Project. Before law school, Daniela was a paralegal with Catania and Catania and a legal assistant with Stolbert and Townsend, both located in Tampa. She is a member of various voluntary bar organizations, some of which include the Hillsborough County Bar Association, the George Edgecombe Bar Association, the Hillsborough Association for Women Lawyers, Tampa Hispanic Bar Association, and the Ferguson White American Inn of Court, all of which are in Hillsborough County. Daniela also volunteers her time as community council member for the State Attorney's Office of the 13th Judicial Circuit, as well as several Tampa area organizations, including Everyday Blessings and Trinity Cafe Dining with Dignity. She does significant pro bono work with Crossroads for Florida Kids, which provides legal representation for children in dependency and delinquency court. Daniela graduated magna cum laude from Western Michigan University Cooley Law School, Tampa campus in 2018. She received her bachelor's degree from the University of South Florida, Go Bulls, in criminology, and her master's degree from the University of Central Florida in criminology and correctional leadership. She holds a workplace certificate in diversity, equity, and inclusion that she obtained from USF, and she is also an implicit bias trainer and has given her presentation for various organizations in Florida. Daniela was recently selected to be a part of the Florida Bar's William Reese Smith Jr. Leadership Academy Fellows Class 10, and she is presently finishing up her tenure with the Hillsborough County Bar Association's Bar Leadership Institute and is running for the Hillsborough County Bar Association Young Lawyer Division's Board of Directors. Please welcome my mentee, Daniela Mendez.
Thank you so much, Shardeen. Good morning to all of you. It is my pleasure to be here. So just like the Judge Jones that spoke before me, I wanted to do something a little bit different and talk to you about mentorship in several different angles that you might have not considered already. But first, I'd like rules of procedure. As a lawyer, I do, and I'm sure you would appreciate them too. And to get me through the presentation, I'm going to be asking you sets of questions. And if you don't already have your chat window up, I ask that you do that now, kind of open it up. Let me open mine up so I can see too. And I want this to be more of an interactive conversation between us today. Because when you say presentation, that makes me nervous and it makes me a little anxious. So just have that on throughout. So my presentation will cover, we're going to talk a little bit about anxiety today, which is a class that I teach. And we're going to talk about networking, obviously mentorship, but also sponsorships. And I love the way the secretary described sponsorships. Actually, I use the term sponsorships, but I like championships. So I'm going to change that term to championship. So thank you for that. Now, one quote that I want to start out with is, you cannot stop the waves, but you can learn how to surf. And that's a quote that I saw with John Kabat-Zinn on Google that I came across that quote. And I, by no means, am not a doctor. I'm a lawyer, just like all of you. But one of the things that I've learned in doing some research about anxiety is that sometimes it gets in the way of creating meaningful connections with people. At times we go in a room and there's all these people there, and you want to find a good mentor, you want to find a friend, you want to find an ally. But sometimes your anxiety can creep up a little bit. You start feeling nervous, queasy, and at times you don't follow through with the conversation that you need to have in order to create and make a mentor connection. So what is anxiety? I describe it as two things. It is negative self-talk. That's the first thing. And by negative self-talk, sometimes it has a voice, sometimes it has no voice at all. And what I mean by that is you can certainly hear it, right? Think about negative self-talk as when you walk into a room, you're like, oh my God, I am so underdressed. Like everyone else knows each other and I don't necessarily, I'm not going to fit in because, I'm not wearing the right clothes or I'm not smart enough to be in this room. This voice will tell you something that you would not tell anyone else. Like you would never go up to someone and be like, oh, you're so underdressed for being in here. Never. But for some odd reason, you tell it to yourself, right? Now, when it comes to anxiety, not only is the negative self-talk there, but also the physical manifestations of it. Let me give you an example. The sweaty hands, dry mouth, you feel this tightness in your stomach, right? And you're like, oh, and sometimes your jaw clenches, right? And you're like, what am I going to do? So anxiety doesn't focus on the now. Anxiety really is a fearful response of past circumstances that you might have faced, but also it focuses on the future. What will they think about me once they meet me, right? That is not right now, present, but instead future, right? So obviously all of us will have anxiety, and no matter what, happens, it's going to creep in every now and then. But the next part of the presentation that I want to talk about is a little bit more about how, do you deal with it? When you are in a situation, think about you're getting ready to walk into a room of people that you don't know. Perhaps you're getting ready to walk into your first law firm job, and you're going to meet people that are there, that know the culture, that have different experiences than you, and you're trying to figure out how to make that connection. So one thing that I would say is arrive early. Believe it or not, arrive early to create margins in your schedule. And what that will do, it would allow you to find parking, and it would allow you to, deal with forever traffic of Florida and how difficult it is navigating throughout the state. But you find parking, you get there early. Think about it this way. When you're in a bar association meeting, for example, and you're getting ready to walk in, there's going to be tons and tons of people there. And they're already going to know each other and be talking to each other. And you're going to think, well, how do I awkwardly insert myself in the conversation? But by arriving early, you have the opportunity of meeting people as they're coming in. You're already in the room. There's less people in the room at any given time, so it won't seem as overwhelming. So you walk in, you're meeting people as they're arriving little by little. And what that would allow you to do is make connections with people as the event goes on. And believe it or not, sometimes the people that arrive early are the people organizing the event. They're the people that are putting it together. And perhaps they're the ones that know a lot of other people at the event that they can introduce you to. And all of a sudden, it's like, I've made a connection that can connect me with someone else. Now, literature says to also improve, or decrease rather, the levels of anxiety is you get good sleep, good exercise, and you eat a balanced diet. As a lawyer, I don't do any of those three things. And I should do a little bit more of it. But that also will help, right? Decrease anxiety. So one of the things too to remember is do not believe everything you think, right? Other people in that room were just newbies, just like you were too. And I love how Judge Jones said, the blind leading the blind, right? And to perhaps Rebecca, Judge Jones was fully capable and awesome and excellent at what he did. And she didn't think of him as a blind, leading the blind. But again, know that you're not the only one that's new in the room. And lastly, before moving on to talk about mentorship, is simple breathing exercises may help. So I was getting ready for this presentation and I'm super nervous. I know it doesn't seem like it right now, but what I did is breathing exercises. I breathe in for 4, I hold for 7, and I release for 8. So I'm going to do that now. And what that will do, it helps me transition to the next part of the conversation. So if you don't mind, just do it with me and kind of see if that helps calm you down some. So we're going to breathe in for 4, we're going to hold for 7, and we're going to release for 8. All right, let's go. So whenever you're in a situation and you want to make that connection with someone and you're like, oh, I'm too nervous, try that breathing exercise and that will help you refocus, right? And go on to do what you want to do. So let's talk about mentorship. And I know you may think, why did she spend all these minutes talking about anxiety? We all deal with it. And I want to make sure that we have some tips that allows us to create meaningful connections after we've decreased our levels of anxiety. So when it comes to mentorship, I define it by this quote. If I have seen further is by standing on the shoulders of giants. And that is Isaac Newton. So remember how I asked you to have your chat ready? This is it. What I'm going to ask you to do is write down in the chat for everyone to see, please, if you don't mind, just make sure it says everyone. Write down in the chat, what are some good qualities of a mentor and a mentee? So applies for both. For mentee, mentor, what are some good qualities? Also, I would like you to write what are not so good qualities of a mentor or mentee. Write it in the chat. I'll give you a few minutes. That's excellent. So I'm getting clear expectations, non-judgmental, good listening skills, honesty, good, patience. That is excellent. And would you agree with me that those things are both for the mentee and the mentor, right? Wouldn't you agree? I think so. What about not so good qualities? We always don't like to talk about the not so good, but let's talk a little bit about that. Caring, listens, willing to listen, constructive advice, selfish. Yeah. What about non-responsive? Unavailable. Good job, Rebecca. That's good. Reluctance to learning, right? Right. I love how a lot of us have talked about listening and taking time and pause to get that. Somebody wrote toxic. That, that's true. There's some people who could be toxic too. But one of the things that I think by asking you to write it in the chat is we can learn from each other, right? You came to learn from us as panelists, but you all are wonderful mentees and mentors as well. So I wanted to put it in writing so that other people can see what are some good qualities, right? of mentee. A lot of that we saw was listening, available, you know, flexible. Other things that we saw, kind of selfish, unresponsive. And again, that goes both ways, right? So by this exercise, try to stick with the good qualities of a mentee and a mentor, right? Be available and be open. And then try to stay away from the not so good things. Now, we all know that we're busy. We're busy lawyers. Every single day, our clients call us to ask us all types of questions, right? And we have to sometimes jump to take care of those things. But if you're busy and you are a mentor or a mentee, did you tell your mentee? Did you tell your mentor, hey, I'm going to be in trial? Usually I have trials, last week of the month. Make sure to let them know kind of what your availability is looking like. If you would like to have set standard meetings like secretary, you can definitely do that. But if your schedule doesn't allow for that, just make sure you have open communication with your mentee and mentor, vice versa, so they know of your availability. Now, let's talk about your circle of mentors. My proposal to you is that your circle can be bigger than you think. When I was growing up, my best friend Sherry used to say, you can only have one best friend, right? She was always really big on that. And if I had any other friend that I would call them my best friend, she would get furious and mad. Well, no offense to Sherry, but she's actually wrong. And now we're older and we appreciate that. My proposal to you is that you can have more than one mentor in a lot of different areas in your life, as well as having more than one mentee. So this applies again both ways. In your circle, I've just written down a couple notes for myself. What should your circle somewhat look like? I wrote a law school connection. We saw a lot of that today in Rebecca and Judge Jones, right? We saw that as well with Secretary when she mentioned she had an intern from Florida State. So is there a law school connection somehow? Kind of take a look back at your list of networks and see, do you have a connection to someone that went to your law school? That definitely makes a difference because it creates a sense of commonality from its inception, right? There's something that you have in common that if the conversation kind of gets a little awkward, you can always talk about law school and kind of save the topic, right? And keep talking about it. Younger lawyer, and I don't necessarily, although it could be an age, right? I don't necessarily mean it just an age. It could also be less experience. There's something to learn about someone that may have a little bit less experience or perhaps younger in age than you. That could be helping use TikTok or helping use social media platforms. But it also means that they've had different sets of experiences. They went to law school perhaps later on in life. The bar looks totally different than it might have looked 50 years ago. So when you have a younger mentee or even mentor, it definitely helps you broaden your view. Older lawyer, again, not just an age, but perhaps more experience. All of us need someone like, I have this motion. I have no clue what to write. I have no idea what this brief should look like. Or perhaps I'm getting ready to be in front of such and such judge. Can you give me some insight on how to prepare, what to do, right? So that's where older, more experienced lawyers come in. What about in and outside of your practice area? Have you considered perhaps developing a relationship with someone that if you do criminal, they do civil? Why? You never know where in life your paths may cross, and then you may need to call on that person. So if you find yourself in your mentee-mentor world only having one practice area, my advice to you is to expand and reach out to other practice areas as well. I know lawyers are the best people in the room. Can no one tell me otherwise? But have you thought about having a non-lawyer serve as a mentor, mentee? There's plenty of things that they can teach you that perhaps a lawyer may not be able to teach you. For example, I have a mentor that's in the medical field. Absolutely nothing to what I do today, but she's able to really talk to me about COVID vaccine and how it works and how to explain it to other people, right? So kind of go back and again, reassess, is there somebody non-lawyer that you can call on? judges are great as well. Are there any others in your circle, if you don't mind sharing it with the group, that I might have not covered? Do you have a different area or different advice or tip as to who else should we branch out to in order to create a bigger circle of mentorship? So I leave you with that. And I think there might have been others. Okay. Mentors from my place of worship. Excellent. Right. That is exactly right. Or the gym even. Good one, Rebecca. So as you're thinking of them, just please be sure to write them in. So now we're going to talk a little bit about, okay, I created those relationships. How do I follow through? Mentorship is a little bit like dating. You wouldn't believe it. It's like, okay, I meet you. When do I call you? I don't know if to call you now, tomorrow, the next week, so that you don't forget about me, right? How do I do it? So one of the things that I do ask is when you reach out to a mentor, mentee, find out what their preferred method of communication is. Do they want to text? Maybe they'd rather text, right? Maybe they'd rather appreciate a phone call versus just text messaging. So when you're initiating that communication with them, kind of find out what they like, and that will give them the opportunity of being more available to you. Sometimes picking up the phone is a little difficult for us. So a quick text would be good, right? Also, propose dates and times for meetings. I get so many of my mentees that is like, we should meet for lunch. And I'm like, okay, when? And then we go back and forth and we're like, I don't know. So if you're reaching out to set up that first meeting or second or third meeting, propose a date and time. You know, what about Thursday or Friday of next week or something like that, just to keep the conversation going instead of doing back and forth, back and forth. Be open to Zoom meetings, phone calls, as well as in-person meetings. Now you're able to just Zoom your mentor or your mentee right away, which is pretty neat, right? So be open to those things, propose those to your mentee or mentor so that it gives them a little bit more flexibility in their schedule to be able to meet with you and discuss whatever you two want to talk about. Also, ask about important things, like, what is your birthday? What about your anniversary? What about your bar anniversary? Right? I just found out Chardine's birthday a couple of weeks ago, and I had not asked, right? And I missed it. And I wish I would have been able to text her a happy birthday. So kind of find out of those things that is not just a professional relationship. And lastly, I'd say send thank you notes. I'm a big person of thank you notes, and Chardine can attest to it. I send thank you notes. Just, hey, thanks for meeting me for lunch. That was great. That way, and just put it in the mail, and it makes all the difference. And if anything, it puts pressure on your mentor to meet with you again because they feel bad because you went out of your way to send a thank you note, right? But it makes all the difference. In the work that I do, people come up to me and say, Daniela, I want to be a mentor, but no one's ever asked. No one's ever come up to me like, hey, can you, or I've never been put in a position where I can be a mentor or I can serve a mentor, right? So for those things I say, what about, do you know someone that you would love to be a mentor for? I'm sure all of us know at least one person that they're like, that person's great. It would be great for me to just help them continue growing their career or help them expand here or there, right? So for me, I was out in practice, living my best life as a public defender, and a professor from Cooley Law School called and said, hey, Daniela, you'd be great for this job. Why don't you come and apply here at higher education? I think you'd be great. And I'm like, I didn't even know you remembered me. I graduated so long ago, right? But to him, thank you, Professor Matthews, to him, it was, he saw some potential in me that I did not see myself right at that given time, right? And he extended that opportunity that I wouldn't have otherwise had. Here we are years later, and he's one of my mentors still today. So reach out to the people that you see potential in, and just initiate that connection. You can also, of course, institute your own mentoring program, at your bar associations or at your law firms, to make sure to create that automatic mentorship connection, if you'd like. And then the last thing when it comes to your circle, what about your personal life? Is there a mentor for you, or that someone that helps you navigate not only the practice of law, but also that work-life balance that we like to see? For me is Professor Jocelyn Hardrick. Key, right? She's this great mother, great lawyer, great professor, right? And she's kind of everything I want to live up to. So with her, I've called her on, how do I prioritize my work and my personal life and my husband and my family in order to do everything that I want to do? And she's given me a lot of guidance that I wouldn't necessarily have thought about. So think about, on a personal level, who else can serve in that role? And can you, as a mentor, serve someone else in that role? Let's talk about networking. Networking. So every time you talk to your mentor, did you know you're networking with them? Same way with the mentee. Every single time you're making that connection, you're telling them about something that you want to do or something that you aspire to be, and they're helping you get there little by little. So let me explain what I mean. I have a younger mentor named Marisol Ruiz, who works at Fisher Phillips. Marisol is a few years younger than I am, and she was a force in bar associations. She was key, and I saw her from afar doing all these wonderful things in all these bar associations. Called her up one day and I said, can you just introduce me to someone at a bar association? Because I walk in a room and I don't know anybody, right? So I reached out to her and she made that connection and connected me with all these different bar associations that I'm now a part of. Does your mentor know about your long-term goals, your short-term goals? Do they know about your plans? Better yet, do they know that you don't have a plan, maybe? And that's okay to have those conversations with your mentor and say, hey, I don't have it all together. I think this is where I should be. Can you give me some guidance? So mentors are good for that too, even if you don't have it all together, right? When you believe you should have it together. And my last part of my presentation is going to be to talk about championships. And a champion's name will become synonymous with yours, right? Now you're going to remember Daniela knows Chardine, Chardine knows Daniela. Make it worth their time. Make it worth their while. If they're signing off, similar to how the secretary's boss called that other person and said, hey, make sure she interns there for just 2 weeks. You'll see how wonderful she is, right? Make it worth their time, because what's going to end up happening, you too will be known in the community, right? So make sure that you're serious, that you explain what is it that you want, because they're sticking out their neck for you. Chardine, for me, is a champion, right? And the way I say it is, she speaks about me in places when I'm not there. I don't sit on this professionalism committee. I still don't, hopefully soon, but I don't right now. So what that meant is when they were planning this event, right? She said, I know someone who would be a great speaker, right? Speaking about me in places where I'm not there. And in turn, I think I've done a somewhat decent job in making her proud this morning, right? So when you do that, and you have a champion that is sticking it out for you, please, perform. But not only that, you have the ability of also connecting your mentor and creating championship opportunities for them too. So when you're in a room that you have this world and availability of doing something, make sure you remember your champion as well. Just like they do for you, you do for them. Now, for the last part of this is mentors, think about this. Who else can you introduce your mentee to help them get further along? What else can you talk to your mentee about other than, hey, how was your day? Perhaps in a coming meeting and subsequent meetings with your mentee, why don't you talk to them about something new in the practice area, something new in your office? Teach them something else that they might have not otherwise known. And for example, when was the last time you talked to your mentee about a new case or case law that's coming down the pipe, perhaps lobbying or new rules? How else can you help them broaden their understanding of a certain subject? For mentees, how can you help your mentors? Is there something you can think about that can help the mentor grow? Who can you introduce your mentor to to help them grow as well, right? Being this two-way street. Prime example, does your mentor know the shareholder or managing partner at your firm? If they don't, set up a meeting, just introduce the two, right? Last quote or I keep saying last, but this is the last part of the meeting, of the presentation, is the value of networking is not measured by the number of people we meet, but by the number of people we introduce to others. And now, just by sitting here, I've met Judge Jones, met Secretary Marstiller, met Mr. Berger, and so forth. Before joining this presentation, Charting texted me this morning and said, "You look good all on your own. I just help others see it." And I added this quote right now. When you have your mentee, your mentor, do you help others see how wonderful they are to you and to the practice? So I'm also going to stick around here for a while. So if you have any questions at all, please be sure to let me know. Thank you for giving me the opportunity, and I'll see you around.
Thank you so much, Daniela. I feel like we can all feel your positive energy coming across the Zoom. So thank you for that. Educational and
Jason.
inspirational.
Absolutely, Jason. Can I jump in for one question? So Daniela, and also Judge Jones, if he's still with us as well. Judge Jones mentioned that he's an introvert. I am an extrovert, so sometimes I have trouble reading the signals when I'm forming interpersonal relationships with people who aren't as outgoing as I. So how would you recommend people getting over that barrier of the introvert extrovert, helping them understand each other and build relationships?
I don't know if Judge Jones wanted to go first.
I'll let you go first. I'm an introvert.
I am an extrovert. And, you know, was also really crazy about this. Charlene and I engaged in a conversation earlier where she's an introvert and I'm an extrovert, and kind of how do we do that? So one of the things is that I say is, do not believe everything you think, is my life motto in some ways. So there's been times where like I approach someone and they're like, I'm like, "Good morning." And they're like, right? So one of the things is, don't take it personal, right? At times life is happening, things are happening. So one of the things that I would say is, when you're approaching someone who may not be like as extrovert as you and I are, Rebecca, is, say hello, wait to see what they say, but also follow up in writing, right? You know their names. And as lawyers, we're able to find people at the Florida Bar website. We can't hide at all from anyone. So send them an email and say, "Hey, it was so nice meeting you. I would love to chat a little bit more," and kind of do another type of communication instead of being verbal, is written, right? And then they're going to be, oral is written, and then they're going to be able to perhaps open that channel of communication. So I would follow up in writing, or send a quick note, or even a thank you note. "Hey, thanks for meeting me. Let's do lunch sometime." Another thing you could do is call them on the phone, but that may or may not work. So that's what I would say. It would allow, I think, an introvert the opportunity at their own time, right, to reach back out and to create that connection. So that's what I would say. Judge, you're up.
So as an introvert, some of the strategies that I use, at the beginning of Daniela's presentation, she talked about, going into the room full of people and not knowing how to insert yourself into a conversation to try and seek out that mentor relationship. The strategy I use is to try and go to those events with another person. So you kind of have that clutch of the person that you know and you feel comfortable with, and then they can introduce you around and be your champion, as Daniela said. So that's a strategy I use. And I also just have to psych myself up. If I know I have to go by myself, I have to psych myself up before the meeting. And then I know that tell myself that I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. And those are my goals for this meeting or whatever I'm doing. And then I know that I get to go home and be with my family and recharge my batteries. And so you kind of have a reward for yourself at the end, and a psych yourself up talk at the beginning. So those are just some of the strategies that I use to try and get past my introvert nature when I know that I have to be in a situation that is not comfortable for me.
So I also want to add, and I put this in the chat, but I love thank you cards. And the secretary said the same thing in the chat. So this is a tip that we use at the center all the time when we're dealing, especially with law students and newer attorneys. Cheap, inexpensive. You don't have to have fancy stationery. If I'm at Dollar Tree or Target or Walmart or Family Dollar, whatever, I pick up thank you cards almost every trip. I stockpile them. I keep them on my desk in front of me. So my desk is a mess to other people, but to me, I know throughout my day, if I have a break in my time, I can grab my thank you cards, nothing fancy, nothing expensive. And every time I go to the grocery store, so Publix, for example, you can buy stamps at the counter. I try to always grab a book of stamps and have them in my drawer so that they're handy and I don't have to say, oh, I have to run to the post office or I need stamps. I try very hard to send 3 thank you notes a day. That's ambitious, but I do try it. And I got out of that habit with COVID and I'm trying to get back into it. And it really does make a difference, not just in the fact that we underestimate how much people appreciate the written correspondence. There are studies that show that, but it also helps you to practice gratitude, and gratitude is life-changing. So I love that tip so much. Thank you so much, Daniela.
All right. Well, with that said, we're going to turn it back over to Chardine.
Thank you, Daniela, for your great presentation. You keep making me proud. Next up is our final presenter for this morning, and that's Miss Erin Weinstock. She's an associate attorney at Rumberger, Kirk, and her practice area is primarily in construction and casualty litigation. She represents contractors, developers, and design professionals in construction defect claims and disputes. She also represents clients in personal injury and premise liability matters. She is a cum laude graduate from Southeastern University Shepherd Broad College of Law from 2019, where she was on the dean's list 4 semesters while she was there. She is also a cum laude graduate from the University of Florida with a major in English in 2016. She's admitted to the U.S. District Court, Southern District of Florida and the Middle District of Florida. And Erin also often provides tips to upcoming practitioners on how to prepare for the Florida bar exam. Welcome, Erin.
Thank you so much, Chardine. I apologize for that. Computer systems, but that was such a lovely introduction. I super appreciate it. And thank you everybody so much for having me today. It's such an honor and overwhelming for me to be on a panel with such prestigious and impressive individuals. So thank you guys so much for including me. I have a little PowerPoint today because as a newer practitioner, we need some guidelines as we're going through our presentation. So I'm going to share my screen. All right. So my presentation today is primarily from the mentee's perspective. As Chardine has said, I graduated in 2019. I immediately began in civil litigation as, a first-year law student at a law firm. So I think the biggest question everyone may have is, who is a mentor? And I know that was kind of my first thought when I entered into the legal practices. I need to find someone who's not only going to teach me what I need to do in order to be successful, but also what I need to do to be successful from a professional standpoint, a business development standpoint, and a legal practice standpoint. These are all, like this presentation has, great options for mentors, but I want to pay particular attention to partners and senior associates. So I'm going to start with partners. I think there needs to be a distinction between a supervising partner and a mentor. Just because someone's your supervising partner doesn't necessarily mean they need to be your mentor, because as all the other panelists have said, it has to do with building a relationship with someone that you feel like you can be, you know, that they can be your confidant, somebody that you can go to when you need advice. And sometimes it can be a little difficult to get advice from the same partner who's working on a case with you, because you might want an outsider's perspective on how to handle even that relationship. And sometimes it works out. I've had the pleasure of having most of my supervisory partners also be my mentors, but I completely understand that's not the case. And going back to what Judge Jones was saying, what Rebecca Bandy might actually think is kind of surprising. I'm a bit of an introvert as well, and I work really, really hard to be extroverted. And if you think that you can develop a good relationship with your supervising partner to eventually become a mentor, that's a great way for introverts to kind of get into that relationship, because you already have experience working with them, talking with them. It's something that comes with ease. However, if you find yourself needing someone different from a supervising attorney, if you work at the state attorney's office, the public defender's office, a law firm, there are so many different partners or senior associates or senior attorneys to go to that you can start building relationships with. And going back to the senior associates, that kind of reminds me of the relationship with Judge Jones and Rebecca Bandy. There is so much you can learn from someone who's just a couple years older than you and someone who has similar experiences to you because they just went through it. And that can be so valuable. I mean, we have senior associates at our firm who I can just walk right into their office and say, hey, listen, I have this hearing tomorrow. I've never dealt with it. Is it something that maybe you can help me with? And even if they've never dealt with it, it's great to almost know, you know what, like, that's good. Okay, I'm not like falling too far behind because other people have been kind of struggling with the same thing and maybe we can figure it out together. And it's like a great process to help each other grow. Okay, so next, what is a mentor to a mentee? As a mentee, I'm looking for someone to not only help me with legal advice, but I also need professional advice. God knows I need personal advice. And I find it super helpful to find a mentor who's able to help you in all of those aspects of life. Also, as like a female in the legal industry who's hoping to one day have a family and still work as a practicing attorney, it's great to find mentors who are able to guide me through all aspects of both my professional career, my familial life, and everything in between. I also think that it's great to have somebody that you can use as a confidant, someone that you can just kind of go to and say, hey, you know, I'm having issues dealing with such and such person. Do you have any advice for me for how to navigate that relationship? And I think that's super important because a lot of us newer attorneys, this is our first true career, and we need help sometimes figuring out how to communicate with people in that respect. And having someone that you can go to, it stay on the down low, it just stay between you two is a really, really great use of a mentor. Okay, so when do I need a mentor? Kind of like what Judge Jones is saying, there are two types of mentees. There are the willing and the non-willing. And there's certain situations where I find with my own colleagues that, oh, you know, I've won every hearing I've ever done so far. Granted, it might only be, you know, 2 or 3 because we're young. How many could we have done? And they don't seek the help of others after accomplishing certain goals. And I think that it just needs to be instilled in mentees that this is the practice of law. Nobody is constantly doing perfect. We're all practicing every day to get better and better. And having the help of others around you can only help you grow and your practice of this, professional career get even better. It also needs to be pointed out that your needs as a mentor, as a mentee, will change over time. For instance, I need all the help I can get at this point. I'm willing to take any, advice that anyone could give me. If anybody listening to this wants to shoot me an email, I'll give you advice after. Sounds great. Throw it in the chat. But, I also see that as you grow in your practice, for instance, a new partner or a new shareholder, or if you're in a new supervisory position, you need someone to help show you the importance of management skills, because not everybody, is born knowing how to manage a team or manage a law firm. And I think it's really important to know that you should be willing through all aspects of your practical career to seek guidance, because we can only continue doing better. And, let's say you don't have a mentor right now, you can start having a mentor whenever. I mean, if this presentation ignites a fire in you to go walk down the hallway and, ask for help from a senior attorney, I say do it, because there's so much you can learn from people. And if you just take the initiative to step outside your comfort zone and walk by, an associate attorney, a senior lawyer, and just say, hey, let's get to know each other. Let's grab lunch. It could be insanely beneficial. Okay, so where does a mentor come in handy? Now, at my law firm, I've learned we do this Thursday lunch where all the associates and partners on Thursdays gather in our boardroom to do case briefs, discuss any interesting things that have popped up throughout the week. Candidly, yesterday I had a question about my health insurance and I brought that to the table. And, I find that very beneficial, because not only does that give you the opportunity to meet other senior associates and other partners in your firm, but we talk about everything. I had a very strange hearing where somebody objected to my subpoenas for medical records in a personal injury case. And I threw that on the table during the lunch. And it was so intriguing seeing the opinions and how other partners would handle that situation. And the best part is that everybody would handle it differently. So you get to almost learn the way other people do things and then pick and choose the way that you think you want to handle it going forward. So you almost have your pick of the apple as far as advice goes. The other great thing about that lunch is senior associates and partners will announce different networking opportunities that are going on that week. And they invite, the room. They're happy to take you with them. They're happy to take you and introduce you to people. And I think that's also super effective from both a mentoring and mentee's perspective, because not only is somebody as a mentee willing to take you somewhere and introduce you to the community, but you also have as a mentee, you have the opportunity to just go meet people. And it wasn't so much effort on your part to even have the opportunity to do so. So why should you seek a mentee? And that's probably a loaded question for some of you mentors out there. But the legal profession truly revolves around reputation and good habits being passed on to new attorneys. We just want our practice to consistently stay professional, reputable, respected. And the only way to continue that cycle is to teach individuals how to practice law in those ways. And as a mentee, we need respected, reputable, and very interested mentors to teach us this stuff. And not only is the mentor-mentee relationship a growing experience for the mentee, but it's also a growing experience for the mentor. And because, as all of the panelists have said, it's a two-way street, we can help learn and grow from each other. And we want to continue paying forward in this area of work, the fact that we want to help each other grow and evolve. So how's the best way to get the most out of your relationship with your mentor? Luckily, nowadays, we have the opportunity to meet through Zoom. And I think that's super beneficial if there's any people who might have, partners in other offices or associates in other offices that they want to get to know better. But I also think there does have something to be said for the in-person relationship building. I think that it's great to be able to, walk down the hallway, say, hey, let's grab lunch. Hey, can I show you this? I'm about to go into a deposition. Can I, give you my outline for a review really quickly? And I think that the combination of the two really helps build a relationship. I also think as a mentee, we have to remember to consistently ask questions and ask for feedback and be open to that feedback. Mentors are just trying to help us learn and grow. And even though sometimes, as Secretary Marstiller has said, it's kind of a hard pill to swallow when you're being given constructive advice, it's so important to just, grin, bear it, swallow that pill, and help yourself grow after receiving that advice. Also, the most important thing about these relationships is that you want it to be authentic. You don't just want to make it like a passive relationship that everybody, gets lunch, talks about their dogs for 20 minutes and then leaves. You really want to get the most that you can out of the relationship and really get to know the person, get to know what makes them tick, and vice versa. Okay, so what mentors need to be aware of from the fragile mentee? Make yourself as approachable as possible. Some of us who have a little bit more of an outgoing personality have the gumption to knock on your door and say, hey, let's get to know each other. And some of us sit in our office and politely wait for someone to notice us and hold our hand and take us through the process. So I just think it's very important to make yourself approachable, someone that you think any type of mentee, outgoing or introverted, will be able to come reach out to you. Also, respect your mentee's time. We're in a profession where billables are important and we have requirements, and some of us also like sleep and exercise. So it's important to remember that we still have what we need to do at work in order to make the law firm, thrive. Also, be sensitive to us. We understand that you need to give us constructive criticism to help us get through any issues we may be having and to help us grow. but we also need it to come from what appears to be a good place and doesn't come with any toxic undertones. Because again, we're coming to you for advice. We don't want judgment on it. We don't want to be made to feel, small when coming for advice. Also, do be open and talk about what your mentee needs. Not every mentee has the same needs. Some of us need help with writing. Some of us need help with oral advocacy. Some of us are very introverted, so it's hard for us to start developing business development skills. And it needs to be recognized that because each mentee is different, the mentorship needs to be tailored to the needs of the mentee. So don't always expect the mentee to reach out. As it's been stated a ton of times throughout this presentation, it's a two-way street. I know myself that if I reach out, 6 or 7 times, embarrassingly, and I receive no response, and then, must received, I get it. Sometimes I'll try for a 9th, but, that's neither here nor there. Also, don't always assume that your advice will be followed. While we sincerely appreciate that you're taking the time and effort to give us advice, at the end of the day, we are still, individuals, adults, and sometimes we need to make decisions based on, the accumulation of our own life understanding. But that also doesn't mean that we don't want to come to you for that advice, because sometimes asking for advice helps us with our decision-making process. Also, don't expect a clone of yourself. I find sometimes that if some mentors really take interest in certain individuals, they try and clone them to be them, which is great because these mentors are obviously incredible. And maybe there should be more of them, in the legal field. But again, the mentee is their own individual with their own set of life events that have gotten them to where they are today, especially with the generational gaps. I'm a millennial. My mentor may be, a baby boomer or a Gen X, I believe. Not entirely sure how that, the lettering system goes, but regardless, we all have different experiences because of our generational gaps. And something that might have worked for someone, as far as hearings, for instance, the way you might have handled hearings even 5 years ago is very different than it would be now because of the Zoom platform. So certain suggestions on how to present yourself during a hearing might not necessarily work nowadays. And we take what is being given to us into consideration and then apply what you're giving us to this new world that we're practicing in, which is different than it was, 5, 10, 15 years ago. And finally, don't give unsolicited advice or criticism. I think that it's a good practice to give advice and give criticism, but sometimes there's certain situations where a mentee hasn't necessarily asked for assistance in that manner, and it can come off as, abrasive or kind of going back to judgmental. I just think that the mentor-mentee relationship needs to be a positive one. And sometimes when being given advice that isn't asked for, especially if, a boundary has been established, like, hey, I'm looking for, legal help or professional help, but I kind of want to keep my personal life private because maybe I talk to somebody else about that, or I have family members I'd rather discuss about that. Giving unsolicited advice in that respect just wouldn't come off the best. And that's my presentation today. If anybody has any questions, I'm sure most of the questions would be better directed to the other panelists, but I am happy to help however I can.
Well, Erin, I want to say that it's so appropriate that you went straight to the technology and the PowerPoint, and it's certainly proof that you can teach us just as much in technology, amongst other things included, as we can teach you. So certainly brave to come out your third year in and speak to us, and it was excellent. So thank you so much, Erin.
Thank you so much, Jason. I appreciate it.
So with that said, we are going to bring our teammate and friend Alex Williams out of the bullpen. He's going to facilitate the questions for our speakers, and he's going to close it down today. So thank you all so much. Thank you, your speakers, so much. And Alex, all you. Thank you, Alex.
Thank you, Jason. Well, we just have a few minutes remaining, literally 2 or 3. So I will open it up to questions we have for the panelists. Who maybe will be willing to stay if their schedule allows for a few minutes to answer questions if we get any. But if you do have questions, you can certainly put it in the chat. And while we're thinking about questions, I just want to kind of sum up the reason we're doing this presentation. And so the question is, why mentor? And you know, one of the things that occurs to me, I'm a lawyer here in Tallahassee. I prosecute judges for ethical misconduct. And one of the things we see is that lawyers and judges often complain about the lack of civility and professionalism. Well, what's a solution to that? It's mentoring. It's fostering excellence in professionalism, ethics, civility, legal skills. It's internalizing principles of appropriate behavior that are consistent with our profession. So be a part of the solution and be a mentor or a mentee. While we're still thinking about questions, if we do have any, I will put in the chat the CLE reference number, and as well as a link to the National Mentoring Consortium, which is a program through the Cooley Law School. And it's a website that has some resources on mentoring, as well as information on how to get involved in mentoring. Jason, did I miss any questions coming in?
No, I'm not seeing anything.
Well, that just speaks to how thorough our presenters were today. They've really touched on every aspect of mentoring and being a mentee. And I just cannot thank them enough for their time and their sage advice and experience.
We do
One
have
second, I was going to say, we do have one question coming in.
Excellent. The question is, what is the most ideal way to obtain a mentor? I assume just emailing someone would be ideal, but any other options? And I will throw this up as a jump ball to anyone that would like to take it.
Well, I'm happy to field that one from my perspective. I, don't mind a cold call, whether it's an email. It's normally, when that happens, it's from someone who has seen me at an event or something like that, or someone has recommended to that individual, why don't you reach out to Marstiller, see if she would be willing to chat with you. More often though, it is, I liked what Judge Jones said earlier about when you go to an event, if you're an introvert, take a wingman with you. I think that's a great idea. So for me, more often than not, it is in the course of interacting with people at an event or a CLE or whatever that may be. Someone comes up to me and says, wow, really appreciated your comments, would like to be able to sit down and talk to you more about whatever. That's always, for me, a great way too. And I know sometimes it is difficult to approach, a stranger like that. But in my experience, whether I've been on the receiving end of that cold call or having done it myself, I have found that most people are open to it, are receptive to it. And in our practice, because we know mentoring is so important, most people are willing to say, yeah, give me a call. Let's set up some time.
Interesting. Interesting. Any other perspectives?
So I would echo, I think that most people would be receptive to the cold call or the cold email or, a discussion at a bar association meeting. But if you find yourself not comfortable viewing that approach, if you are, and I would encourage you, if you're not a member of your local bar association, to join. But if you're a member of your local bar association or any other group, approach your leadership and see if there is a mentoring program that's already in place that you can sign up for and get paired with somebody. Because most bar associations, no matter if it's just the local bar or the barristers or the or the women lawyers, they will have mentoring programs that you can sign up for and try and get paired with a mentor that way. But if you have someone specifically that you want to be mentored by, absolutely, by all means, approach them, and you can be the one that initiates and asks them out to coffee or to lunch. And I think that's a great way to break the ice.
Excellent. Excellent. And I see one more question. This says, is session 1 available to view? Rebecca, I think it is available on the website. Am I correct?
That's absolutely correct. And that's a great question. Thank you. It's really, really good. It is on the Center for Professionalism's website. So if you go to the Florida Bar website, www.floridabar.org/PROF, and you click on CLE, we have 2 tabs there, one for our podcast. We have a podcast called Never Contemplated. You can access it on any device, any podcast platform, Spotify, Apple, whatever. Each one of those episodes includes information on mentoring, and they're each worth free CLE credit, and they're just amazing. And our secretary has been a guest on that episode. I think I put the link earlier on, but on one of the episodes, but just amazing. I love them. My kids listen, my friends listen. I share those episodes all the time. So it's not just for lawyers, and it's engaging for everyone. The first episode is under the video tab. And so if you go to the video tab, you scroll down, you'll see it about halfway down the page. It's free. Just about everything we produce here at the center is geared for our attorneys across the state, our law students, our paralegals, our court reporters, and we try to keep everything as much as possible free and on demand.
Excellent. Well, I think, unless I'm missing any other questions, I think that is the end of our presentation.
One more, Alex.
Oh, we do.
It's in the
What's
question in the Q&A section.
Oh, I missed that.
Thank you.
It says, how do you address a more seasoned opposing counsel if you feel they have been less than professional towards you?
I actually have an answer to this.
Please, absolutely.
So I've found I've dealt with that before, and generally kind of what I do is almost make them a little more friendly. So if they have an issue with the way something happened, I'll let them vent. You can't control the way other people are going to speak to you. So you might as well just let them say what they need to say. I sit there, I listen. And then, when they're done, I'll maybe make a joke, okay, well, are you done? Can we, talk about what we really need to talk about now? And generally that's well received, and it almost calms them down a little bit. And then they're more willing to speak with you in a more professional way. I also think sometimes, we don't have the opportunity to really meet a lot of opposing counsel in person right now, just because, we're not going to the courthouses so much. We're not having a chance to converse with others. You don't get to chat with opposing counsel before a hearing at the courthouse anymore to hopefully get to resolve it before even having to go in front of the judge. And I think that it's a good idea for younger attorneys to maybe give opposing counsel a call once the case is filed and say, hey, I got the complaint. I see what you guys are doing. Let me introduce myself. And that kind of starts the relationship on a good foot.
Excellent. Excellent.
Yeah, pick up the phone. We don't do that enough in this profession anymore. Everything is done by email. And a lot of the attorneys that I speak to that are in that diversion program that Rebecca was talking about get in trouble over emails that they have sent. And so I think that's a great suggestion, is to pick up the phone and talk to opposing counsel when the complaint is filed and start that relationship out on a good note instead of waiting until the true adversarial nature of the relationship kicks in. And unfortunately, we are still on Zoom a lot, or telephone hearings, and you're not having to look the other attorney in the eye and be in the same room with them. And unfortunately, that breeds a different type of confidence to be a bit of a jerk that may not have been readily there if you were in person. So I love that suggestion to pick up the phone.
I had one question, and I don't see any others coming into the chat, and I will throw this up to anyone that's willing to answer it. And this touches a little bit on what Judge Jones was speaking to in the sort of compulsory mentor-mentee relationship, where it's a supervisor supervising a younger lawyer and in the same office. And I wonder, it's been my experience having met a prosecutor and had a supervisor that was a mentor. That person helped me navigate some of the office unwritten rules and policies and even the politics, or at least where the landmines are that you should avoid, or don't mention this to someone. So, and so I wonder if those of you that have been mentors have found having those conversations is useful, or if you've been a mentee and found that advice to be useful.
I've had those conversations before. Office politics and organizations they're just people, and when people interact, and we work hard, we've got issues, it can be stressful, and so there will be office politics and things like that. And I think it's important for younger lawyers to have somebody to go to say, okay, I'm not sure, I feel like there's a landmine out there, can you help me navigate around it? At the same time, because office politics do exist, and we know, I think both the mentor and the mentee need to be careful, step very cautiously around those kinds of situations. I mean, speak more broadly about how to handle situations like that, as opposed to naming names, because I think that might be less helpful than you think.
What I would add to that is just ask for advice, right? Say, what advice do you have for me as I'm new on the job? What advice to be more efficient, or to be more prepared? But leave it kind of open-ended, right? That's a great way to ask your mentor, what advice do you have for me as I'm starting to work at this firm? And you'd be surprised the wonderful things they tell you, perhaps even things that you didn't even think of asking initially. From where can I park if you don't have like on-site parking, to where can you get the best snacks in town or in the work area. So just ask that open-ended question. What advice do you have for me? Or perhaps even phrasing it this way: what do you wish you would have known in the first 60 days when you started working here? And they will tell you some things that really will come in handy later on.
That's great advice. Excellent. Well, not seeing any more questions. I want to thank our presenters again, Secretary Marstiller, Judge Jones, Ms. Weinstock, Ms. Mendez. Thank you all so much for your time this morning. We really appreciate it. And we hope everybody who's viewing has the opportunity and just makes the decision to go be a mentor and a mentee. Do both. Thank you so much.
Thank you.